Hey, welcome back to Mr. News Art Class. It's wonderful to see your smiling faces today. If you're watching this video, you either found it on YouTube randomly or you're in my classroom with a substitute art teacher. If you're in my classroom with a sub, I apologize for missing you today. I'll see you guys next time. But we're going to take our normal projects that we've been working on together, set them aside, and do something different for today. This picture is based on a form of body art called Mehndi. So if you're not familiar with Mehndi, it's a type of tattooing, not permanent tattoos like we're used to seeing here in America, but instead it uses the leaves of a henna plant to create a dark brown dye that seeps in and stays in the skin for a significant length of time, but not forever. You can see from these pictures that Mehndi is a form of art that uses lots of patterns, especially shapes and lines that you might see in nature, lots of curvy shapes, dots, all sorts of interesting designs. So here I have several different skin tone kinds of colors to choose from. You can pick which one you like. You don't have to pick one that matches your skin tone. In fact, none of them really matches my skin tone, but if I wanted to go closest, I'd go with this one, or if I wanted to go a little darker, I'd go, it really doesn't matter. You pick which one you want. And of course, before we dive in with a Sharpie, we want to make sure that we use a pencil to write our name on the back of the paper. We don't use a Sharpie on the back of our paper because it bleeds through, y'all know that. Now, to get started here on the front of my page, I can choose which way to turn my paper, and that might be dependent on how I want my hands placed. Now, you could do one hand in the middle, or kind of at a diagonal, or you could do both hands. You would need some help probably. I know I'm right-handed, so I can easily trace my left hand, but tracing my right hand would be more difficult. I might need to get a friend to help me with that. And so the first step is just simply choosing which way you want it and tracing your hand. And notice here that I did trace all the way down my arm until it got to the edge of the paper. And now, before I start making patterns and designs on here, I want to add my fingernails. And now that I've got my hand drawn out and my fingernails drawn into it, I can jump right in with my Sharpie and start making some patterns. Now, when I make my patterns, I want to think small shapes and dots, and I want to think about symmetry and nature and anything that comes to mind as an interesting design that could be repeated several times. So, maybe I'll start with a spirally pattern. And maybe I want to add some interesting design to that. Maybe I'll have a couple of dots come off the end. Maybe I'll have some kind of bumps, little semicircle kind of shapes that go inside on the inner edge of that spirally loop. And maybe a dot inside each of those semicircles. And so you can see how with each pattern, I'm not just doing one big pattern, I'm really going into the details, the tiny little details of what's going on inside that pattern. When I move on to another pattern, I want to think about how they're going to work together. So maybe I want to have another pattern that sort of stems off from this one and keeps that sort of rotation going. So maybe another sort of spiral over here. And again, I could go with exactly the same thought with these bumps, or I could make it a different kind of pattern. Maybe this time I'll do the bumps on the outside edge instead of the inside edge, but where I could do something completely different. I'm gonna jump to time lapse and just doodle a bunch here and then come back maybe a little bit after and talk to you about the different kinds of designs I chose and why I chose them. So there, I think I've finished with the hand at least. I'll do some background stuff here in a minute, but first I just want to point out a few little things I did. All of this started with one idea. I just made a spiral and I went from there. And what I tried to do was keep that spiraling theme. So I had another spiral, and then I had those spirals kind of loop around this way with a dotted spiral. Made a little circle inside of that spiral and then looped back out with this horn shape that spirals around it that way. For the fingers, I started all 5 fingers with this small dot, big dot pattern. Small dot, big dot, small dot, big dot, small dot, big dot. On all 5 of the fingers, the 4 fingers and the thumb. And I kind of wanted, my thought with those was to have all 5 fingers start with the same basic underlying fundamental idea, but then approach finishing each of those patterns with a different style. So here I've got these bumps that loop around the big dots with, dotted lines outside of that. And then here I made circles around the big dots and made lines that you could imagine them going all the way around the finger, making it like little rings going around. And then here I kind of went with a similar theme to this with the bumps, except did wavy lines instead. And then here I did like little dash marks that you could imagine as being, again, like rings, but instead of going all the way around, they go all the way around but stop when they reach this dotted line. And then with the thumb, I took those small dots and made those into dotted rings that go around, and then had these big sort of leafy shapes coming off of the big dots. And then for the wrist area down here, I just kind of thought about a lacy type of pattern where it would have some thicker areas and some thinner strands and some little baubles, little dots. And a lot of times when you see these henna tattoos, they almost look like the person is wearing bracelets made out of lace, made out of dark colored lace. So anyway, that's the hand finished, but I want to do something interesting with the background. All of this empty space is quite distracting. So what I'm going to do first is make what we call an aura. An aura is just when you go around the shape and you try to stay the same distance away the whole way around. So I'm going to jump into time lapse, do that real quick, and then talk about what I'm doing in the background after. So here I've made that first halo really dark, nice and thick and dark, and part of the reason for that is because I want to contrast it against the rest of the background. I want the hand to stand out, so I made this really thick, dark outline. And when I make a background in the rest of this space, there's really no limit to different ways you can do that. You can see here on this picture, I simply just made little light rays coming out that just kind of draw your eyes into the hand. I could fill each of these spaces with another pattern. I could do bigger patterns, I could do smaller patterns, I could do more detailed patterns like these, but out in the background, or I could do patterns with bigger shapes. Or I could keep doing more of these auras just around, just fill the whole background that way. I could just do big stripes in the background. I could draw more hands in the background. There's really no limit. You can go to town with it, have some fun with it, finish that background however you want. Now I'm going to go ahead and sign my initials right here. And I can't wait to get back to school and see what you made. High five! If you enjoyed this project, check the link in the card or down in the description. I've got a whole bunch of videos called Zentangles, which is very similar to this style. And if you're having trouble coming up with ideas for how to draw these patterns, I have a whole playlist of videos showing how to come up with ideas for these different kinds of patterns. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up, hit the like button, the subscribe button, the little bell that makes you get notifications, and I'll see you next time.